Ik ken de stemmen die ik zag die inspreken, maar zelf is het nog maar.
Heb je les gespeeld?
Nee.
Heb je uitspreken mee was?
Ja, die bonden.
Ja, ik ben die. Ja, ik weet wel. Heb je uitspreken gespeeld?
Nee. Ik ben niet zo heel erg van.
Oh, maar hij is vooral eerlijk. Hij speelt ook een joker. Maar heel smart helpt. Ik zag het smart.
Ja, ik heb die ook.
Okay, we can start.
Let's the moving way to.
Hey, good morning. We are finally live streaming and recording the lecture. So we can finally start a few minutes late. This is a general overview of the whole block. And we are now in week 3. So the idea is that we are over here. You guys are building your prototype. You already had a class about this last week. And we are today going to have a first look about... Oh, okay.
Yes, it's actually responding here.
This is going to make it extra fun today. And... Here we go. And we are going to have today we're going to talk about how you make measurement questions and how you are going to actually do a usability study. And the second half of today's class, we're actually going to make a quick study. Each group is going to work together to have a very quick experiment about the features on the router planner. More about that later. Next week, there are no lectures, but the idea is that next week, I'm going to make an appointment with every group so that we can look at your measurement questions, your research questions, the things you're going to try to study in your experiment for this part of the block, so for the human-machine interaction. And we are going to try to improve them, polish them a little bit to get them to where you can proceed from the questions to making your whole plan, the experiment plan. So after, so it's going to be the 5th and 6th of December. We're going to make appointments with everybody. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about formulating your research questions and sub-questions. So basically, you have your prototype, you are trying to build a system. What is it that you are, do you want to find out? Is the whole idea of the system something that people are interested in? Or does this part of the interface work very well? What exactly is the question that you don't know the answer to yet? This is going to be the focus of your experiment. And today we're going to know how to make these questions. And out of these questions, then sub-questions, you come up with measurement questions to know exactly what are you going to measure during the experiment. And in the second half, we're going to have a very quick usability experiment, which you guys are going to conduct. So, So the idea, usually, you have a client or some opdrachtgever, or maybe you as a designer, you come up with a new system, and then you usually have some kind of like some question marks, things you don't know. There's a problem, like maybe in the system, like maybe you have already a system that a lot of your users are complaining about. Like, hey, I can never find the files to open in this program, or I can never find this functionality. So generally, you have a general problem description, and from the general problem description, you need to come up with some research question, which is a more formal way of formulating your problem. Okay, so from the general description, you sit with the problem owner, with your client, and it's like, yeah, it's always difficult, and I don't know how it's going to do, and all the users are complaining, and you write the description down, and then from the description, you just take the key elements, you make them into a formal research question. Research questions usually are too big to answer in one go, so then you see, okay, this question has probably many parts. We can divide it into sub-questions, and then these sub-questions we can answer one by one. By answering these sub-questions, we have the answer to the main question. And then for each sub-question, in order to answer it, we make some measurements questions. And these measurement questions are like, okay, so how efficient is the user interface? And then you say, okay, so I can measure time. So first I measure how long does it take to open a new file? How long does it take to add a new shape in Photoshop? How long does it take to... Then we know what do we need to measure? We need to measure time. Maybe we need to measure something like a number of mistakes. If the user wants to make this function, how many times does he have to try until he succeeds, he or she? So this will be the usability study. Wait. This will be the planning part. So this blue part is the planning, preparing the test, and then here you conduct the test. After you have all the measurement questions, you know what you need to measure, you conduct the test, you make the measurements, and then after that comes the fun part of getting the data, making it into tables, putting it in Excel, making some figures out of it. You analyze the results, and from the analysis, you come up with some conclusions. Then you get the insight, because you see that the numbers will tell you the truth. And from that, you write a report that you give back to your client, like, okay, these are my findings according to the data that we have collected. Let's see. So these are the steps you do after you conduct the test. These are the preparations that we are doing now. Here. Look at that. So the first step is making these research questions. Okay, general guidelines about making research questions. And the guidelines for main questions and sub-questions are very similar, because sub-questions are only research questions but are divided into smaller parts. So these questions state exactly what will be investigated. So from the problem description, you know, very general, we then go exactly to what we need to investigate. So no general questions, open questions like why does this happen? How come it is? Nothing about the aesthetics, the beauty of the interface, which is more beautiful, what color is nicer. Normative questions about morals, what should be, not for usability experiments, maybe for research, which will be, you will get more on that on the fourth period. But for now, we are mainly concentrating on usability experiments, so these questions will not fit there. Question always has a question mark in the end, so if you write your question and there is no question mark in the end, then you know that there's a problem. So it has to start with the what, how, which, to what extent. These are fit very well. Very important that it has to be measurable. So it's something that is So like how beautiful something is, it's not very measurable, but it's like how much time does it take, then something that we can measure very clearly. And it has to be realistic, so it has to be something that you can answer within the allowed time and budget. So don't make your question too complicated, because then you will not be able to answer it within the allowed resources that you have. Feel free to ask questions if there's anything you don't understand. Okay, let's see. So the thing about research questions, and the reason why we are going to have an appointment next week, is that it's really difficult to come up with a really good research question. And this is definitely true for this course, for your machine interaction. It will be very, very true when you do your research block in the fourth period. You come up with a question, it looks fine, but then if you look at it more carefully, then you will start seeing problems in it. It's not clear enough. There's some vagueness, or after you start conducting the experiment, you see like, okay, well, this actually we didn't define in the research question, so now I'm not sure what I'm going to measure here in this experiment. And for example, how can I improve learning performance of students under the age of 20? So is that precise enough? Is that specific enough? Maybe it's too broad. We cannot study every aspect of learning, because then we don't have time to look into books, into what kind of lecturers you have, what kind of slides there are. So maybe we can specific for now on a specific part of this. So maybe just having a laptop. So using a laptop in the classroom. So, okay, some people are gaming now, I know this, but it's okay. But does that improve the quality of the lesson, or does that reduce the quality of the lesson? Okay, we don't know that, but we can make an experiment about it and then measure that. So then we see that this question, although it looks like 90% the same as the first question, we have limited the scope to a very, very specific part that's now easier to handle in our experiments. Okay. And we can then be even more specific. What kind of laptop? Which kind of students? First-year students, second-year students? Then immediately we choose 1 year. We limit it to 1/4 of the scope. What do we mean with influence? So these kinds of terms that are vague, maybe you can define inside the question or underneath the question. You explain it. What do you mean with performance? Is it grades? Is it how much they actually remember out of lectures? This kind of things. For today's experiment, so the experiment that you are going to conduct, we are going to try to answer this question. So, how effective and efficient is the site Fietsersbund Routed Planner for planning a route inside the Netherlands for users between 18 and 25? Is there anybody here not within this 18 to 25 age group? Okay, so you will not be taking part of the experiment. One of your groupmates will take part, and you will be observing or running the experiment. So here we have defined the population, so the target group of our experiment, and here we have also defined what we are going to study, what we're going to experiment on, and here is the goal of the experiment. We are going to look at the effectiveness and the efficiency of this website. Now, in the first lecture, you remember that we talked about the characteristics of the usability test. First, you have a goal. The goal is to improve the usability of a product with each test focusing on specific goals. So we have this research question. We are specifically focusing on the route planner function efficiency and effectiveness of the route planner of the Petersbond website. The participants represent real users. So we are focusing on users between 18 and 25, and you guys happen to fall into that age group. So you represent real users. If you want to test how useful is the website on senior citizens, and then we do the test on you, then of course the results we get from you will not be applicable. So we focus on the real users. The participants on your experiment represent the real users. The participants will do real tasks. So when you are working on the website, you will do tasks that you would actually do when you're planning a route on the website. If you actually were trying to bike from one place to another, you observe and record what the participants do and say. So while you are doing the experiment, so each member of the group will have different roles. So you will have one member will be actually participating in the experiment as the test subject, the guinea pig, the proof domain. And you will have one other group member who is running the experiment. So he will be like, okay, this is your first tasks, and then starting the stopwatch, ending the stopwatch, writing down the time. So one group member will be running the experiment, and the third member will be taking notes. Like, okay, the first step went completely wrong, and this is maybe we have to ignore this participant because it didn't go according to plan. Oh, this participant is complaining a lot. He's saying like, oh, this website's really terrible. I really cannot find anything. So these things are very valuable. And if you're not recording what's happening, then maybe you will lose this information. So you always need someone to kind of be observing from further back and just take the big picture and note down some important information. And then, of course, the final step is to analyze the data and then diagnose the real problem and recommend changes. This will be like the reporting part of the process. And this will be a visualization, more or less, of what the process is. So again, you start the problem description, research questions, the research questions and sub-questions, and the measurement questions we are going to give you, so they will be in the slides. And then you guys are going to run the tests and make a recording of what's happening. And you're going to get the data. The data will be measurements of the time it takes to finish each task. And you're going to represent it with some kind of figure. Then we're going to show the figure to everybody else, and we're going to have some final conclusion about it. Everything clear so far? Okay. So we have the main question. So we have the problem description. We have the main question. And then the main question is usually too complicated to answer in one go. So we divide it into sub-questions. And then by dividing it, it becomes more manageable. And then by answering the sub-questions, each sub-question is like one step towards the solution. So you go to the first sub-question, the second sub-question, the third sub-question, and by answering all three sub-questions, you now know the answer to the main question. So this is the main thing. After you write the sub-questions, you can check them and see whether they are all relevant, sometimes, very, very often. And I tell you, these things are from experience. I'm not coming up with these things. The students come up with the sub-questions, and there's a lot of times sub-questions that have nothing to do with the main question. It's just something that they can answer while doing the experiment. That's very nice, but we don't need this sub-question here because this will not help us answer the main question. The main question is what we are going to try to get. So these sub-questions, if they are not relevant, then we don't add them into our usability study. Are your sub-questions complete? Which means by answering all these sub-questions, by going through all these steps, do we have enough information now to answer the main question? No, there's a part that we don't know. Then we need to add another sub-question to complete the whole picture. Okay, now with this additional sub-question, we can answer everything about the main question. So read your main question, read your sub-questions, and make sure that the sub-questions are complete. and that you haven't forgotten anything. And then a third problem that can occur is that your sub-questions can have a little bit of overlap between each other, and then maybe you can make your sub-questions a little bit independent of each other, which will make your life easier. Because if you have a lot of overlap between your sub-questions, every time you answer one of the sub-questions, you are doing extra work because you're also answering a question and a half, because these questions overlap so much. So making really good sub-questions that make your life easier later on is something that takes a lot of time and a lot of experience. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So we have this main question, and in order to answer it, we can divide it into 3 sub-questions. Can the users find the route that they are looking for when they are using the Petersbond route planner website? And how intuitive is the process of finding the bike routes on the route planner service? And what do the users think of the efficiency of the route planner service? So now we have the main question and we have the sub-questions. So we can start the experiment, right? What do we need? Someone said no here? Or
No, actually, yeah.
You said yes. Okay, no, the answer is no. Because we still need the measurement question. This is the thing we need to come up with before. So we had the main question, we had the sub-questions, but before we start measuring, we need to have measurement questions. So each sub-question leads to measurement question, one question or multiple questions. And for these measurements, you have variables and units. So we are going to measure how much time it takes to plan a specific route. So it's a route route planning time, and it's measured in units, which are seconds or minutes. Maybe it takes you hours. So, for example, how quick can a user fill his or her login name into maybe the Blackboard page, and then the variable is time of filling in your login name, and the unit is seconds. And for a lot of the things that we're going to do in this course, we are usually going to measure time for measuring efficiency. How to make measurement questions? Make the questions measurable. That's very obvious. Identify measuring opportunities. So you have these interaction with your system, and then sometimes it's not very straightforward what you can measure or where you can measure it. So maybe your system is not really a website that you use it to do something, but it's like a piece of hardware that you use to like maybe an electric skateboard you use to go from one place to another. They need to measure like how good the skateboard is. How can I measure this? Where exactly can I take measurements that will give me the answer to that question? In these cases, this is not very clear. So you have to identify measuring opportunities in the interaction between the user and the system that you're working on. Then identify the measurement type. More on this on the next slide. And identify the range of your measurements. So if you're planning a route on the website, then this is going to take like a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes maximum. So this is our range. So also to help you plan your experiments. If it's something more complicated, maybe it will take hours to finish Then each run of the experiment will take maybe half a day, and this you need to take into planning when you're planning your experiment. Measurement types. There are three main types: nominal, ordinal, and quantitative. And when you study the statistics, you haven't studied anybody taken the statistics course yet? Okay, yeah. So I think it's in the third period of the second year. Yeah. So in the next period, you'll go more into statistics, and you'll know more about why it's very important to distinguish between these three things. But I already mentioned it now because it's good to know. There are nominal measurements, which mean that basically you are making categories. And for example, we have male, female, or like color, red, green, blue, different taste, sweet, sour, bitter. These are different things. Nothing is better than the other. They are just completely different categories. You cannot compare apples with oranges. That's what they say, because they're completely different categories. And these we call nominal, right? Yeah, nominal measurements. And then we have ordinal measurements. And here we have categories that have a known natural order, but then we don't know exactly how much is the difference between these different elements in this category. So we have a child, an adult, and an elderly person. But then, okay, there's an adult, there's a child. But if we have a child and adult, then what's the age difference between them? We don't know that exactly. We just know that the adult will be older than a child. So we know that adult, child, elderly, we will organize them in this order. So that's why they call the ordinal measurements. But we don't know what's the difference between them. So if you can also say agree, neutral, disagree. We know that neutral is between agree and disagree, but again, we don't know the distance between these things. And we can have continuous measurements. These are things like distance, things like time, and then this is very straightforward. You just make the measurements, and then you write down the number, temperature, age in years, and then you can already have very exact measurements. Now, why do I mention this? I mention this because in previous years, I had students who would have a questionnaire that they give to the users, and they say, my user interface is very good. And then the people will say like agree, strongly agree, neutral, disagree. And then what the students will do is they do this with 5 participants, and they say, okay, I have these 5 answers. I will average the results, and then it will be like agree and a half is the average of my users. You cannot do this because these are not numbers. You cannot average opinions. So when you have this, the best you can do is that you show a graph, like a bar graph of the opinions, and then people will see it, and then they will have an idea about what people think about your system, but you cannot average it and come up with an average result for your result. If you do want to average results, which one would you take? Continuous. Thank you very much. And so for age, for one variable, the way you measure it, it can also be nominal. If you say like, hey, if your question is, are you older than 25 years old? Yes, no. Then we know that people older than 25 years old, people younger than 25 years old. You can say in which category you belong, 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 20 to 30. We know that they are in this category or that, but we still don't know exactly how much the age difference is between them. Or we can say, how old are you? And then you just write your age, and we're done. We have like a continuous scale for this measurement. Another practice example. How good is the organization of the human-machine interaction Blackboard page for the Software Engineering 6 block of the year 2018-2019. Right? And then we want to come up with sub-questions for this main question. Now, every year, I kind of left it to the students to come up with the sub-questions, and every year it was very difficult for the students to do this. So this year, I'm going to give you guys a very important tip. These are the main criteria that, or the most classic criteria that you would measure when you're doing a usability experiment. Now we are going more to user experience, and there's more like things about how you feel, how happy you get when you are using a system. But classically, what we would always measure is three things: effectiveness. Can the user actually do what they want with the tool, with the system, or not? So can you accomplish your goal or not? And usually we measure this by how many mistakes do you make. So how many failed attempts you make and how many successful attempts you make when you are trying to achieve one task. And thereby we know whether it's effective, whether it works or doesn't work. After we establish that it works, the next step is to measure the efficiency. Efficiency means how much time do I need to waste in order to get what I need. You don't want to spend your time planning your route on this website. You want to get there. So this website is like an obstacle in your way. Okay, it's kind of helping you, but it's kind of an obstacle in your way, and you're like wasting time on it. And the more efficient, the less time it takes for you to do what you need to do, the more efficient the experience is. And third thing is the user satisfaction. So the user satisfaction is how pleasant does the user feel after they finish using your system. And it can be that the system is not that efficient. So the system is kind of takes a lot of time to use, but people are very happy with it. And a good example of this is games. When you play games, the game actually doesn't do anything for you. But when you finish playing the game, you feel very happy because it's whatever the game has good graphics, has good sound effects, achievement points. So the user satisfaction is very high, but efficiency is 0 because you didn't do anything. You were just playing a game all day. So we have this question, and then we need to come up with sub-questions, and we need to measure effectiveness, efficiency, and user satisfaction. So very straightforward. We have this main question. What are the sub-questions we can come up with if we want to measure these three things? Again, effectiveness, efficiency, and user satisfaction. Effectiveness is whether we can achieve something or not. Efficiency is about
The survey.
survey. Elaborate.
That's basically all I have.
Okay.
Survey is usually the correct answer.
Server among students, how satisfied are you with Blackboard?
You can you can measure how much time it takes to find something. You can ask for satisfaction.
Very good. Very
And
good.
You can do that both on a survey, I think.
Yeah.
Well, you could also measure with the software track.
Okay, you're kind of jumping forward, huh? So we have now the main question, and you're thinking already into measurement questions and what exactly are we going to test, what are we going to ask. First, we need to divide the main question into sub-questions. And then from the sub-questions, we go to the measurement questions, right? So here we have this main question, and we need to divide it into effectiveness, efficiency, and user satisfaction. And you are going in the right direction, okay? So you're talking about time. So
Yeah,
how much time does it take to...
Satisfaction. How satisfied are the users?
How satisfied are the users, right? So this is efficiency and user satisfaction. And then the first one was effectiveness. So what do we ask for effectiveness? Someone else?
Can you find the? Can people find the files they're looking for?
Perfect. Yes. So these are the three sub-questions that we're going to have. They are going to be, can users find the content that they need on Blackboard page? And how efficient is the organization of the content on the Blackboard page? So what Taysa was saying, and how satisfied are the, oh sorry, Arthur. Well, that's what Arthur was saying, and how satisfied are the students with the Blackboard page? And then we are going to go from these questions into measurement questions. This is again very straightforward. So can the users find the content that they need on Blackboard page? How can we measure this?
How long does it take them to find what they're looking for?
No, this is the second one. The second one is the efficiency, which is the time.
Dus
First one is-
like what percentage of the time can they find?
Hey, perfect, perfect, perfect. And then the last one is how satisfied are you, right? So can the users find the content they need? So what is the success rate? Exactly what you said. And how many mistakes? So the measurement we're going to measure is the mistakes that the people use on when they're attempting to do something. How many times do they deviate away from the path? Exactly, exactly. Yes. And how efficient is it, the organization of the content? So we will measure this by time. How long does it take to find the sheets for a specific lecture? And then we indeed ask them for their satisfaction. And we say, what is the level of satisfaction of the user after they use the Blackboard page for a specific task? All right. So here is our experiment that we are going to do. And you already have the main question. The main question is about the Featuresbund route planner. We want to know, can the users find the route that they're looking for? How intuitive is the process of finding the bike? And what does the user think of the efficiency of the route planner? Basically, we're asking here effectiveness, efficiency, and user satisfaction. And we are going to take measurements. How many mistakes does the user commit while trying to find the routes? How long does it take to plan the routes? And how satisfied are the users with the system? Okay? You need to remember these things because these are the things that you're going to do in your experiment. So you can start writing these down. Because when we are running the experiment, I'm going to have the tasks that the users are going to do on the screen. Okay, so mistakes, the time, and the level of satisfaction at the end of the experiment. Okay. So now that we have this, the main question, the sub-questions, and the measurement questions, we can start experimenting, right? Right? We can start experimenting now? Yeah? You think so? Okay, yes, we can start. Yes. Final comments is that it would be really nice if you can record the screen while the people are doing this to replay what happened and then count the mistakes. If you cannot do it while doing the experiment, everything is going so fast. You're keeping track of the time. You're doing lots of things. So for Windows, there's a free Cam Studio that you can use to record the screen. For Mac, you can have a QuickTime Player, which is the built-in video player of the OS X, Mac OS. You can also use it to record the whole screen. Or you can just use your mobile phone to make a recording. Not recommended because you will have like maybe a shaky cam. When you are done, shh, we're almost done, okay? 1 more minute and then we can take a break. When you are done, we are going to compare the Featuresbund route planner with the Google Maps route planner. So I want from everyone to have a figure that looks kind of like this, with the time that it takes to complete the task, the 3 tasks that we're going to do, and then we will have system 2, which is Google Maps, and system 1, which is the route, the Fischersbund planner, in order to visualize your results, to show me, your Opdrachtgever, how long it takes to do each of the tasks for the both systems. And then, as you can see here, if it always takes longer with system 2 than system 1, then it's immediately straightforward, clear that system 1 is better than system 2, right? Right?
User satisfaction might be different.
User satisfaction may be different, yes. So this will be another, let's say, measurement. But for the efficiency,
Yeah, for efficient.
this will be a very clear result. Okay.
Let's go.
This is going to be the experiment. You're going to have one one member of the group will be the participant. One member will be the experimenter. So he or she will be giving the tasks. This is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. This is what you have to do. Starting the stopwatch, ending the stopwatch. And then you will have the observer. You will make a screen recording to use later to analyze the results. And you'll have 3 tasks. And these are the tasks that you are going to do after you finish the experiment. So for this, we will have around 30 minutes. We will have, let's say, 15 minutes to actually do the experiment, and then 10, 15 minutes to analyze the results, make your figures, come up with a conclusion. You'll have 2-minute presentations to compare both route planner of Fischersbund to, hey guys, hey, we're almost done. We'll compare the Fischersbund to Google Maps, and we are going to make some comparison figures like the one we just saw, and you will give your conclusion according to all what we saw. We think this one is better or that one is better. We will take a 10-minute break, so we will be here at 10:35, and we will immediately start doing this.